Good evening, colleagues. I think I will start from where we stopped yesterday, before my iPad battery went off. Uh, Today we will start from some sources of conflict. I know that I have discussed about this a little bit, but I felt there's a need also to refresh our mind from where we stopped yesterday. All right. So, in terms of sources of conflict, some of the sources of conflict include difference in perception. That is why you see people saying perception differs. So people may have different perception to different issues of life or issues within the workplace. For instance, when we talk about perception, perception can be shaped by the cultural background of an individual. Perception can be shaped by the nationality of an individual. Perception can also be changed by the religion of an individual. We have many people, different people in the workplace. We have Christians, we have Muslims, we have Jews, we have Hindus. So their perception may shape their thought process, and that can also come into the workplace. So difference in perception, difference in the way people view their world, people's worldview can result to conflict, can be a source of conflict within the workplace. Sometimes you can hear people saying, this is against my religion, this is against my belief. So that can, of course, bring about conflict within the workplace. Another aspect which I have also alluded to yesterday is limited resources. Limited resources. When we have paucity of resources within a given organization, of course, resources naturally is scarce. Can you see? So, scarcity of resources can be the source of conflict, both within an organization and within a nation. Can you see? And I gave instance yesterday of issues of conflict related to how resources are shared in Nigeria, where some Niger Delta young men took up arms to protest or to show their grievances in terms of how the oil wealth is shared in Nigeria. That is conflict in itself. And in fact, there's an article that I have written about that, oil politics and the Niger Delta developmental conundrum. You can look at some of the articles that I sent to you. That can, of course, give you a perspective of how conflict can originate as a result of limited resources. Then, of course, I gave also a perspective in terms of departmentalization and, of course, specialization. Departmentalization can result to conflict, whereby each of the department feels that, no, this is our own territory. We need to protect our territory. You don't need to encroach in our own territory. And this is my specialty. You don't need to enter into my area of specialty within this organization. Focus on what you do. So that can, of course, bring about conflict. Issues of departmentalization, which is why you see that a modern organization now is having the thought of breaking down the organizational silos, breaking down all the organizational silos, whereby organizations are now emphasizing about borderless organization, where people can work with one another without actually creating borders or without creating functional roles within an organization, where people can work in synergy, a kind of cross-pollination of ideas and working in harmony from one department to the other. All right, another issue also that I mentioned yesterday was issues of nature and interdependence of work activities. Can you see? Nature of the work activity and how different jobs depend on the other job. For instance, if it is a manufacturing concern, it goes through one process to the other. Maybe if this other people within a different department have to wait for another department to manufacture the product before it comes to them. Delay in delivering to them can bring a conflict within organization, whereby they will see the other department as hindering the progress of their own work. That can trigger conflict in the workplace. Then another issue that can also trigger conflict is issues of role conflict. Can you see? Who is assigned to which role and who report to who? Can you see? There are instances where you see an employee reporting to two managers. Sometimes that can result to what we call role ambiguity. Can you see? Whereby you don't know actually where you belong within an organization. That can, of course, result in conflict. That can, of course, bring about conflict in the workplace. Is that clear? Then another aspect there that can also bring about conflict in the workplace is inequitable treatment. Can you see? When people are not treated equally within the workplace. For instance, if two employees commit an offense and one is dismissed and one is retained, then that is unfair. That can bring conflict within the organization. That is to say, one has been treated favorably while the other have been punished for the same crime. So that can bring about conflict in the workplace. And in fact, it can lead to protest if other colleagues are not actually happy with the outcome of such a decision. Then another aspect there is violation of territory. I give a instance of that. When somebody begins to encroach into other people's work or other people's territory. And I have also given an example of that in terms of issues of departmentalization. There are also instances where people feel that, wow, you are entering into my territory. This is not supposed to be your role. This is not supposed to be your function. You are poke-nosing into what I do. You are encroaching into what I do. Face your own business. So those kind of things can actually trigger conflict in the workplace. And of course, environmental challenges. Environmental challenges can also be a source of conflict in the workplace, whereby if we decide to change how we do things within an organization, or if there is introduction of new machinery in the workplace as a result of environmental factors, that can, of course, also bring about conflict within the workplace. The way we do things being changed. You can see that one of the crises that affect organization is resistant to change. So when we are introducing changes as a result of changes within the environment or environmental factors, that can also trigger conflict within the workplace. So keep that in mind. Environmental factors can, of course, or environmental changes can also bring about conflict in the workplace. All right. We progress. We progress. Then the next is the management of conflict. How do you manage conflict? You know, one major way or one particular way of managing conflict is to clarify the goals and objectives of organization and sub-objectives within organization. So there is a need to clarify the goals. What is the objective of the organization? Because if we don't know the objective, we'll be working, we'll just be moving here and there, and of course interrupting people and encroaching into people's work without minding the specific objective of an organization. So there is a need for an organization to clarify the objective. And of course, that is why we have the concept which is known as management by objective, whereby an organization will have the main strategic objective and all that subsidiary function within the organization will align their activities to the main goals of an objective of the organization. So clarification of these objectives is very, very much important if we really want to manage conflict within the workplace. Because at times, Some of the reasons for conflict in the workplace is because at times some people don't know the objective of the organization. So they just work without vision. They just work without scope. They just work without mission. So they are missionless, and as such, they create confusion also and conflict in organizations. And of course, another way to minimize conflict is effective distribution of resources. Can you see? The resources should be perceived as distributed fairly among functional areas within an organization and among employees. Can you see? You cannot reward one employee better than another employee that contributed the same amount of work to an organization. So you must balance your reward, you must balance your promotion, you must balance the way you share resources. You cannot permit one employee at the same hierarchy to use an organizational car and debar another employee from using the same car. So that will create a kind of issues of organizational injustice, and certainly it will bring about, it will create conflict in the organization. So there should be equitable distribution of resources within an organization, and it should be perceived and felt that resources within the organization is properly distributed. In terms of resources going to department for them to carry out their work, and of course resources going to individuals in form of reward, in form of promotion, in form of incentive, in form of benefit. There should be a kind of equitable distribution of resources. Then the next one is, of course, human resources policy. Now you see, policy guides the activities of an organization. Policy is the rules and regulation that guides employee within an organization. Certainly, in terms of making an organization an effective organization or improving the relationship within an organization, most of the activities, the way things are done within an organization should be contained in a written policy and procedure. So the members of the organization sometimes will follow those policies. Can you see? So that if you decide to work outside the policy of the organization, you will be committing an ultra-vires offense. That is to say that you have bypassed the laid-down policy of an organization. So if there is a laid-down policy, people will work according to policy, and that will go a long way to reducing conflict in an organization. Then another aspect that is that people should be rewarded both monetarily and, of course, non-monetarily. Can you see? Reward should not just be money, but of course, there are ways you can also reward people for their contribution to an organization, either by appreciating them, patting them on the back, saying, well done, my dear, you have done well. Of course, you can also give them certificates. Some people appreciate that. Sometimes also promotion. Can you see? These are not monetary rewards, that can, of course, help to minimize issues of conflict within the organization. Another aspect is development of interpersonal through group processes. I see. There should be a kind of development of interpersonal through group process skills. So members of an organization should also be able to develop interpersonal or group process skills. This can be achieved through a kind of team building. This can also be achieved in terms of group activities, working together instead of people working in isolation within an organization. So when people work together, when people go out for team, when people go out at least sometime for leisure within the work environment, you can see that people begin to understand themselves, what were their previous differences, and you see that somehow they will be able to address or minimize the conflict within that particular organization. Then another aspect there as a way to manage conflict is, of course, like I have alluded in my previous explanation, is, of course, group activities, which is, of course, part of that team building, and of course allowing people to work in group, mixing up group. I remember when I was a lecturer at Cape Peninsula University of Technology, I think there was a class I entered, and I noticed that in terms of the sitting position of members of that class, you can see the white sitting on one row, you can see the color sitting in the middle, and you can see the black sitting at the extreme. And I just introduced a new way of sitting pattern. Whenever I enter into that class, I miss everybody. I tell the black, the white move this way, the colored move this way, so that the class can be mixed. People can work together. And when I give them assignment, I also give them a kind of assignment whereby they have to be mixed, not just white in one assignment. At least there should be a kind of cross-pollination of ideas where the whites can bring their own initiative, the black can bring their own initiative, and of course the colors can bring their own initiative in terms of some of the demographic compositions of classes in South Africa. So group activities, and of course leadership have to play a good role. Leadership and management. Leadership and management should not be seen to be creating more conflict. Leaders, an effective leader should be the leader that is able to calm the situation. Can you see? So there's need for effective leadership. Can you see? If you see an organization that is full of conflict, know that the leadership is weak. Can you see? Either the leader is taking side or the leader is biased, then certainly there will always be conflict in that particular environment, So, but a situation where the leader is effective and the leader is able to manage every person within that organization, or in fact a country, equally, and treat everybody equally without taking side or without being biased to his own ethnic region or ethnic personality, certainly everybody will see that leader as a uniting leader and as a leader that is promoting peace and harmony within an organization. So such kind of leaders are needed to manage conflict within an organization. Of course, leaders and management goes hand in hand. Leadership and management goes hand in hand. Then, of course, in terms of the organizational processes, I see, if we have organizational processes that result to conflict or that exacerbate conflict within the workplace, there's a need for us to rethink and see how we can alter those processes in such a way that conflict is minimized within an organization. Is that clear? And of course, social-technical approach. Social-technical approach is also, like I told you, is when you look into the social welfare of employees while also introducing technology into the workplace. So we must also take into cognizance how do we put our employees first or take into consideration our workers when we are introducing automation into the workplace. So if we're able to take care of most of these things, then certainly we will be able to minimize conflict in the workplace. And you can remember when we spoke about Taylorism, which is, of course, Frederick Taylor's idea, and we spoke about human relation approach, where human relation was emphasizing a kind of social aspect, taking care of workers, industrial humanism, and of course, Taylorism, and of course, bureaucracy was actually emphasizing the technical aspect of work, that human beings are meant to work, and of course, human beings can be utilized for maximum profit in an organization without taking into perspective their feelings, their suffering, their emotion, and others. Can you see? So, if we take into consideration, technology is good, but technology should not be to the detriment of human beings. So while introducing technology, we must also look into the social aspect. That is the human, how people interact together, the social aspect of humans within the work environment. Is that clear? Fantastic. All right. So we'll progress. The next topic in our slide is organizational stress. Organizational stress. I say, organizational stress. What is organizational stress? Naturally, we experience pressure regularly. It can motivate us to perform. Pressure sometimes can motivate us to perform. Organizational stress. It is when we experience too much pressure. When pressure is too much. Pressure is good. Pressure will make us to perform. For instance, most of the things we do in our department, we are given deadlines. So that puts you under pressure to work. But when this pressure becomes too much, it is when we experience too much pressure and feel unable to cope that stress comes in. That stress results. So stress is the adverse reaction people have to excessive pressure or other types of demand placed on their work. Can you see? So when the demand for a particular work is more than the capacity of an individual who is doing that work to cope, that is when stress comes. That is known as stress. Can you see? When we are fed up, when we cannot cope again as a result of the work that has been assigned to us, then that is, of course, known as organizational stress. Is that clear? Great. Now, we progress. Causes of stress. What are the causes of stress? One of the major causes of stress is organizational restructuring. When an organization is restructuring, either as a result of merger, amalgamation, merger, which is of course amalgamation, or absorption, or takeover, or introduction of machinery, automation into the workplace, as a result of re-engineering, and other ways of organizational restructuring, that can lead to stress. Because for one thing, some people may be retrenched as a result of restructuring within the workplace. That alone is stress, knowing that your job is at stake, knowing that you are insecure. That can result to stress in the first place. But of course, another stress is that those who survive the restructuring, those who survive, those who were not retrenched, get additional load of work, which of course will affect their capacity to cope. That will exacerbate the level of stress within the organization. So these are, that is why organizational restructuring is one particular causes of stress or cause of stress within an organization. Then the next one that can also cause stress within an organization is excessive rules, regulation, and bureaucracy. And in fact, I have given you the disadvantage of bureaucracy. Bureaucracy is an organization that is managed by so many rules and regulations. So before you do anything, you go and look for the rules. You are regulated. And like I told you, that masks someone's initiative. One cannot be innovative within a bureaucratic organization. So this can even cause stress if you have other ways of doing the job, but you want to read the laid down rule first before you execute. That can be frustrating sometimes. So bureaucratic organization that gives excessive rules, regulation, can of course lead to stress. Now, another aspect that can cause stress is development in information and communication technology can cause blurring between work and home life, which is in fact work-life conflict. I see. Most of these information technology, such as your WhatsApp, your Facebook, and of course your YouTube, and of course your internet, seems to have blurred the relationship between the difference between work and home, or your normal family life. For instance, in fact, I think I have one of my PhD students one of my master students who wrote a thesis on that particular topic. Her name is Katija. She tried to see the real conflict between academics and their workplace as a result of the introduction of information communication technology, which she actually referred to as work-life conflict. Can you see? So these technologies have actually violated our other lives. Sometimes you can be at home and your manager is giving you a WhatsApp message. That can distract you from other family activities that your family responsibility. And of course, also sometimes you can just take your laptop to or do other things. You see a lot of emails coming from your workplace, giving you instruction to do this or that. So you can see that somehow the difference between work life and family life is totally blurred. That can also, of course, cause stress to a working man or a working woman. Then another aspect is also organizational change, especially where redundancy is involved. And I spoke about organizational. There are many things that can make an organization to change. There are many things that can trigger change within an organization. And I gave you an instance, for instance, the introduction of technology. For instance, when we introduce one technology, it can result in the retrenchment of 10 workers in that particular section. So this can cause stress. Can you see? This can cause stress, because automatically most of those workers will become redundant. So certainly that will result in stress. Now another thing that can also cause stress in the workplace or in an organization is authoritarian style of leadership and management. When the leadership is authoritarian or autocratic in behavior, certainly it will increase the stress of people in that particular organization. Because when a leader listens to people, when a leader allows people to share their views, when a leader allows people to contribute their views to decision making, definitely people will be more relaxed within that organization. But when you have an autocratic leader or an authoritarian leader within an organization or within a country, people will be totally frustrated. And that can, of course, increase the level of stress in that organization or within a nation, as the case may be. Then another aspect is a lack of delegation, or work autonomy. Can you see? If you are working in an organization where responsibilities are not delegated to you, and you don't have autonomy to do your work, certainly it will affect your stress level in that organization, because you are always receiving instruction, you are always being controlled. So as a result of that, the stress level will increase within that particular organization because no responsibility is delegated to you. Anything you have to do, you have to go and take permission. You don't have autonomy to do your work according to, in terms of work autonomy, to do your work the way you like to do it. Then another aspect is organizational structure and, of course, role relationship, conflict in role. The structure of an organization can, of course, result to stress in an organization. So take that into consideration. You can see, if you enter some organization, you can see that it is poorly structured in terms of the layout and in terms of how things are done there. That can, of course, increase the stress level of somebody. And of course, role relationship. If your role is not properly defined within an organization, it can also increase your level of stress, whereby you don't know who is your boss, you don't know who you are reporting to. That can, of course, exacerbate your level of stress in an organization. All right. Now, coping with stress. How do we cope with stress? When we talk about individual technique, we'll have individual technique of coping with stress. We'll have, and of course, organizational technique of coping with stress. In terms of individual technique of coping with stress, we'll have, for example, changing your viewpoints. Can you see? Changing your viewpoint. Try your possible best to change your viewpoint from that you have, right from time. Of course, that is, of course, changing your perception. If right from time you have a perception that this is the way things are done, and of course you enter into an organization and it is done differently, see possibility of changing, embrace change, be a change agent, and of course be a change taker. And you see, be among those that embrace change easily. I think that, of course, can actually help you to cope with the stress level within an organization. And of course, effective time management. Be a time manager. Can you see? Don't use your time on wasted ventures, within an organization, and even when you're at home. Can you see? If you spend all your time watching movies in the night, then definitely in the workplace you feel dizzy, you can't work, you can't cope. That will, in fact, exacerbate the level of your stress. So you should be able to manage your time, both at home and, of course, both in your workplace. Because at times, certain things you do at home can even affect our work life. You see, if you're the type that is always quarrelsome with your husband at home, of course, certainly, when you come to work, you'll be totally exhausted, and you will feel frustrated, and in fact, you may even take that quarrel at home into the workplace. Can you see? That can also increase your level of stress. And of course, another issue is jokes and laughter can help you to overcome, to cope with stress. Now, when you are the type that can joke it over. Can you see? After some time, you notice that, somebody has provoked you, but instead of keeping it and letting it to bite you, to kill you, you laugh it over, you joke it over, you create a kind of fun-loving environment or a lively environment within an organization. That can help you to cope with stress. And of course, another aspect is relaxation. Relaxation can also help you to cope with stress. In fact, taking a nap after work, relaxing a little bit, reading some nice novels or religious book, as the case may be, if that helps you to relax. Find anything that makes you to relax. And of course, in India, there's of course yoga, and of course some other relaxation techniques. If that helps you, see how you can relax, and that can become a kind of a coping mechanism for stress. Then, in terms of organizational measure to cope with stress, one of the measures should be effective communication and conversation. Organizations should make sure that communication and conversations within an organization is effective and, of course, healthy. Can you see? So that can, of course, enable an organization to cope with stress. That is to say, a manager must make sure that people are communicating effectively and the conversations are very cordial. Then another aspect is supportive work environment. For organization to cope with stress, there should be a supportive work environment. You must know what is happening to your workers as a manager. Can you see? And give them support in difficult times. There are times some people passing difficult times in their homes. Give them some moral support, instead of killing them, instead of investigating, know what is making them not to perform the way they used to perform. Can you see? And try to be empathetic to their plight. Empathy is very, very important if you are a leader or a manager. within an organization. So supportive work environment is one way an organization can cope also with stress. And of course, there's also EU framework agreement for stress. I think most of those agreements, you can also look at that in your textbook in terms of stress. I think we have that as one of the figures in one of the tables in your textbook. That is the EU framework agreement. And of course, HSE management standard. Those standards are also listed in your textbook. And of course, the Kazan principles, those are also enumerated in your textbook. Just do that for yourself reading to get a scope of what those EU agreements actually explaining in terms of coping with stress in the workplace. All right. So basically, we'll move to the next topic, which is the work-life conflict. Work-life conflict. Work-life balance is an issue of growing concern. I have spoken about work-life conflict. And of course, here we're talking about work-life balance. So they are opposite of each other. Balancing and conflict is the opposite. Can you see? So they are alluding to almost the same issue. Work-life balance is an issue of growing concern within the United Kingdom, for instance. And of course, not just United Kingdom. It's just because the author of your material must have come from UK. It's also an issue in South Africa, you know. The declining influence of trade unions in regulating the employment relationship, job insecurity, the extension of operating and opening hours, the impact of new forms of information and communication technology on work are just some of the factors that have made it increasingly difficult for workers to balance their work and their personal lives. Can you see? So most of these things that have been enumerated are some of the things, the challenges that have made it difficult for workers to balance their personal life and, of course, their work life. It's whereby one aspect is encroaching on the other. Can you see? So we can see now the demarcation between our personal life and our work life. Can you see? Because at times we still work when we're at home. Is that clear? You know, particularly, for instance, myself, I work during holidays. My students still contact me, even when I'm far away in other countries. Can you see? So that is part of it. All right. We'll progress. A family-friendly model can also be used. Family-friendly model, according to Black. Culture, the message has to come from the top. When we talk about culture within a given organization, message have to come from the top in terms of culture. So the top management should be those who are driving the culture of the organization, a culture that will create a harmonious working relationship. Emotional and developmental, helping parents to get clarity on the choices they make through mentoring and, of course, coaching. Friendly family model, emotional and developmental. That is to say, it also helps parents, because most people in the workplace are parents, to get clarity on the choices they make through mentorship and, of course, coaching. Practical, which include parent networks, provision for child and elder care. Can you see? So these are ways one can also minimize some of the challenges when it comes to a family-friendly model, creating a family-friendly model within an organization. And you see, so that people are not, family people or people who have family don't feel left out or left behind within a particular organization. So they should be creating a kind of a climate, an environment where those who are responsible to family can also cope within an organization. And most of them are some of these information that have been outlined. The message has to come from the top in terms of embracing those with family, emotional development, helping parents to get clarity on the choices they make through mentoring and, of course, coaching. For instance, some organization can also be a medium of informing people not to have so many children nowadays, that people should at least manage within the confine of their resources. Then, of course, in terms of practical, so that parent network, provision for child, and, of course, elder care. In some organizations, you see they will have a daycare center for children. Some organizations will also have a home for elderly people. If you have a responsibility of looking after your parents, they can also help. That is, of course, when it comes to a family-friendly model within a workplace. Then we'll progress. I think that is almost the last slide, which is generation. I've mentioned to you that we have different generations in the workplace. And in fact, being able to manage the different generations is quite very, very important. A weak manager or an ineffective manager may find it difficult to manage this blend of generation. I will have three generations on our slide there. The first one is, of course, if we start taking it according to hierarchy, or if we decide to just take it as it is contained in the textbook, we'll have Generation Y. That includes those who were born in 1980 to 1995. And of course, we'll have Generation S. Those are people who are born from 1964 to 1980. And of course, we'll have people we call the mellow baby boomer generation. Baby boomers are those who were born just immediately after the Second World War. That is from 1946 to 1963. So there are different characteristics about these three different generations. For instance, Generation Y, that is those who were born in 1980 to 1995, they just like to travel. Can you see? They want to have fun before looking after career. Can you see? So these people, they are fun-loving people. They like to have fun. They want to travel before having a career. Whereas, of course, because of that, in the earlier stage of their career, they don't take it very, very serious. Then, when we talk about Generation S, those born from 1964 to 1980, they want to struggle, they want to work. And after work, they want their pay. Can you see? That is, work and get my pay. So they want to slug it out. After the slug, the reward. So they want to see the reward after putting hard effort. So they are committed, but they want to see the reward. They want to be paid for the effort that they have made or they have contributed to an organization. And of course, we have the mellow baby boomers. These are people that were born from 1946 to 1963. Baby boomers are those looking for job security. Can you see? These ones are not arrogant. They just want a secure job. They want to do their job. As far as their job is secured, they are happy. Can you see? So these people are motivated. Baby boomers are motivated by job security. So they want to work for life. They want to be permanent employee. Whereas Generation X, that is those born from 1964 to 1980, they want their money after their work. Can you see? They want their money after their work. So those ones can be motivated with money, with incentive. So if you pay them higher, they put in more effort. Can you see? Then the Generation Y, that is those born from 1980, they love to be pampered. Can you see? So if they're in an organization and in fact you didn't take good care of them, why they just abandon you? And in fact, we have people they have called, included, who are now known as the millennial generation. Sometimes people classify Generation Y and millennial together, but some authorities seems to have demarcated them, you know. So for millennial generation, they are those that are, of course, technologically savvy individuals. You know, they love technology. They move from one job to the other because they are in high demand. People want them because of their expertise in technology. And in fact, I can even give an example that some of the technological activities in my office are handled by my student assistants, those who are in this millennial generation, those born from 1990 upwards or from, 1990 upwards, you know. When you tell them, do you know this? They know everything about technology. They know social media so well. They know everything in YouTube. They know everything in Instagram. They know everything in Facebook. They know every aspect of technology. YouTube, how to use online technology to do everything. They know it. You can now see that I'm giving you my lecture, taking it from my iPad. There are so many other mediums of delivering this lecture, such as Google Team, and of course the other one they call the Zoom. Can you see? So for millennial generation, they know all these things. I plan to also take some workshop from them in order to also use more recent technologies in delivering this lecture within this period of coronavirus. But that is actually the difference in terms of most of these different generations within the workplace or within societies. And of course, encouraging the generations to work happily, these different generations, also within the same workplace, can also create some confusion, where the younger generation may be very obstinate to the older generation, where the older generation may feel that they have been disrespected and they are sidelined. And of course, where, different generations have their own conflict as a result of the way they perceive life, their worldview. Can you see? But somehow, most of these divergent perspective among a generation, or most of this divergent worldview can be managed properly by an effective manager, taking into perspective the different generations under his leadership. All right, his or her leadership. Thank you very much. Just look at the assignment there and see if you can attempt them. They are self-assignment. You have to see if you can attempt them and link them into your work. And of course, look at also the assignment in your chapter 2, the last lecture, and see if the information you have received in chapter 3 can also enable you to attempt a kind of self-studies, you know. So with this, ladies and gentlemen, I think we have covered the third topic out of the 5 topics for your first semester learner guide, that covers your first semester's learner guide. So we have 2 more chapters to go before your main examination, or 2 more additional topics that are quite extensive to cover before your semester examination. So I wish you all the best. I know that our lecture would have been more better and of course much more inspiring if we were talking in a class one-on-one, where students can contribute and of course share their own perspective, because you all are also working class, and most of these things I'm talking about, or most of these lectures that I'm giving, you at times experience them also firsthand in your workplaces. So, owing to this current coronavirus challenges, of course, which is also part of behavior, we have decided to adopt some safety measures in terms of social distancing and, of course, using online materials to expand or to extend knowledge to you guys in your very home places or in your respective homes. I have also released all the slides for the semester. They are all on EduLink. You can access them from EduLink. I have actually sent them to Mrs. Rukhshana Sheikh to distribute to every one of you. Go to EduLink. You will see all the slides, both all the slides, PowerPoint, and of course the lecture note that normally accompany the slides. I have also attached them on EduLink. You can access them. And in addition to all the slides and the lecture notes, please don't forget to read your textbook. Can you see? From your textbook, you will get additional insight, additional examples. There are so many figures, so many tables on your textbook. Don't ignore them. There are so many cases also on your textbook. See if you can at least get one or two ideas from those cases and see if you can solve some of the, attempt some of the questions or assignments, that can actually prepare you gradually towards your examination. So I wish you all the best, and we'll continue to interact. You'll be receiving the next lecture, hopefully next week. But for the time being, I ask every one of you to remain safe. Try your possible best to observe the social distance, and my prayer is with every one of us. Have a wonderful evening and keep well. Bye.